Hi, Joshua Cutchin here from Atlanta, Georgia, freelance tuba player. This is my review of the MAW tuba valve. I decided to review the Martin A. Wilk, or MAW valves, M-A-W, because I haven't seen any video reviews of them on the internet. And when I was interested in purchasing these myself, it would have helped a lot to have an idea of what they're all about. You'll find reviews here and there on sites like TubeNet or Chisholm.com that talk about these particular valve set, but you won't find anybody who's made a video. So I thought this might be beneficial to everyone. A little bit about myself. I'm a freelance tuba player here in Atlanta, Georgia. I did my undergraduate degree at the University of Wisconsin-Madison with John Stevens, beard, and got my master's degree at the University of Georgia, where I studied with the late Fred Mills of Canadian Brass and David Zirkle. I picked up these MAW valves. I've had them for about 3 or 4 weeks now. To give you a little bit of a history about what these valves do, Martin Wilk decided to try to find a way to harness the best of rotor valves and the best of piston valves. And to do that, he created this really unique patent. If I can sort of show you here, this is my Parentucci PT6 tuba. This is the original factory valve that came with it. So as you can see, it's just a traditional valve setup. It does have the interior bumps that you're used to seeing on the interior of the airflow passages, and the factory spring, which is actually pretty tense. If you compare this to the MAW design, it looks like something from Mars. You can see there's a huge chunk missing over here on this side, and on the interior of all these passageways there are no bumps to interrupt the airflow. The website for the valves claims that these valves will improve note stability, legato passages, and staccato attacks, increase clarity, make playing easier, center notes with precision, and allow you to produce more sound with less effort. Here's my spoiler alert for the review. I'm quite enamored with this valve set. I asked a service technician friend of mine why these weren't just factory standard, and he said that he felt like it was probably a little bit difficult to machine, but the other thing is that they're a little bit cost prohibitive, and we'll get into that later on in this review. In terms of ordering and installation, you can get these directly from the Martin A. Wilk valve website. The actual website is mawvalve, MAWvalve.com. These are not necessarily plug and play valves, as it were. You may need to have some machining done. I did for the PT6, but that might differ if you get it directly from the website. I actually got these secondhand from my friend Chris Combest because they didn't fit his new tuba, not because he had any issues with them. They just didn't fit the new horn that he got, which was quite fortuitous because I was I was looking for a way to sort of augment this horn. Why did I try to pick up these MAW valves? I actually love this instrument a ton. But even though I love it a ton, I was thinking about getting rid of it or switching over to a different instrument. I've been playing this horn for 16 years. It was picked out for me by Bob Tucci, and I love everything about it except for the valves, which anyone who plays a PT6 with these large set factory valves, these sort of York copy valve casings with the stem, the old style stem, will tell you that they're, as a friend of mine said, their hand swells up to the size of a baseball glove because they're just using so many muscles and they're using their tendons so much. It really hit for me when I started doing less, orchestral stuff and more what I'm into now, which is commercial and jazz work. If you're trying to do something with like walking bass lines, forget about it on that factory setting because it's just your hand's just going to hurt and it's going to cramp. So I was really sort of at the end of my rope, and I was wondering if there was some way to make these valves better. I'd always been intrigued by the MAW valves, but I didn't know what they were like because you hear such good reviews of them on here and there and sort of written from different players, and they sort of sound a little bit like a panacea. But I got them, and it's been a great experience. To give you an idea of why I got them specifically is because of that valve weight. So what this does is with this design, again, to sort of show you this giant chunk that's missing over here on the side, plus replacing your mother of pearl factory caps from the PT6 tuba with these smaller Yamaha valve caps, actually reduces an entire ounce of weight per valve. And as you can imagine, that means that you can actually use a spring that's a little bit less heavy too, which means that you'll have a better return when using the valves, and that you won't have to press them down so hard every time. I actually have a friend who is a musician, who was an instrument repairman, and he felt these valves, and he was astounded, because honestly, they feel like euphonium valves. They feel like really well-oiled euphonium valves, which is not only unheard of, I think, for this particular model of tuba, but it's not something that you usually get, in my experience, out of front action tubas anyway. Top action tubas, it's a little bit of a different story because you've got gravity on your side. So what have I noticed about replacing these valves in this particular horn? Well, the first thing that I've noticed is that everything is much more facile. It feels like a smaller horn than a PT6. Doesn't sound, it still sounds like a PT6. But the things that I'm able to do in terms of playing solo repertoire, fast passages, it's so much easier. I actually was having some hand problems before I switched these valves out, and it's about 100 times better. My hands haven't hurt since I switched these out. Since a lot of what I do, again, is sort of jazz and commercial, that can be really useful. So here is a quick little snippet of me playing Anthropology by Charlie Parker, and it can sort of show you some of the facility that these valves can give you. This was recorded in a high school band room that I was going to be teaching at later that day, so forgive the kids in the background playing xylophone, but give it a listen. One of the things that was advertised or claimed by some people who have used these valves is that they've noticed a pitch improvement. I really haven't noticed a big change in pitch, really, but I will say that everything feels tighter. There's less fighting, there's less of a sort of an X factor, sort of a less of an X factor whenever you slur through certain passages. To that extent, the biggest thing after that sort of facility that I've noticed is a real evenness across the entire horn, which is one thing that a lot of people have said. Slurring across partials while changing valves is a lot easier. For that sort of second and third partial at the top of the staff, you know, on B-flat tuba, it would be an F sharp or a G flat. For C tuba, it would be an A flat. Really centering that note, it's a lot easier to just pop that out. That's always been sort of a squirrely note on a lot of horns that I've tried, just in terms of centering that pitch. There doesn't feel like as much of a break when you do play lyrical passages. The lyrical playing is greatly enhanced, in my opinion. That might be partially due to the reduced valve weight, which just lets you be a little bit more free with your hands as well. Here's an example of an excerpt from a Rochu etude, as written, down 1 octave and down 2 octaves, to sort of illustrate not only the lyricism, but also, again, that openness of the lower register. So it's not all wine and roses. There are a few things that I would say are kind of cons, although they are greatly outweighed by the benefits. The first thing is really the cost. These valves, a set of 4, are $1,250 from the website. Again, I got these secondhand, so I can't really speak to that sort of customer sales interaction, but that's the main reason that people aren't going to be able to afford these valves. If you are a professional and you're doing a lot of stuff on a particular horn, these valves have just, again, really changed a lot of the stuff that I do on this instrument. There's another downside, which I don't know if it's really a downside, but you sort of have to relearn to play a little bit because the projection is very much pronounced, and it eliminates so many frustrating variables that if you're messing up, it's a lot more your fault than it is the horn's fault or the valve's fault. So I've had to sort of make up new excuses for myself. There is, of course, an installation cost. Like I said, these aren't necessarily plug-and-play valves. You will probably have to get them machined, depending on the particular model that you're trying to get in there. The good news is if you find someone who knows what they're doing, it shouldn't be that big of an issue. And then it's just a matter of going back and fine-tuning and tweaking some stuff. I have run into one issue with my first valve because it catches all the moisture and condensation, or most of it rather. But my felt, actually at the top on the inside underneath the cap, was getting really just flat out soaked, which is going to increase the degradation of that particular felt. The reason for this is because the valves are ventilated with 3 holes on top. And so all that moisture is just squirting through the top of that first valve. I just recently today had that first valve replaced with some neoprene, and it seems to really be sort of alleviating that issue. The other 3 valves, the felts are dry as a bone, which is the good news. I suppose that some people might sort of balk at the idea of having to do an installation cost, but if you find somebody who's good, it's going to be really easy. It's going to be a pleasurable experience. Huge shout out to Kevin Bowen of North Georgia Hornworks, who did a great job at an extremely reasonable price and has been helping me sort of go through this experiment of using these valves on this particular horn. So that's about it for this review. I'm ecstatic. I couldn't recommend these more highly. They've changed the way I've been playing, and honestly, this went from a horn that I was thinking about trading in or selling, despite my love of it, to a horn that I can't wait to play every day. So that's my review. Hope everybody's doing well, and talk to you later.